My name is Arun Kumar and I am the driver and I own a Lamborghini Murcielago. The Lamborghini Murcielago was released when I was 6 years old, just as I was entering into the boyhood dream car absorption phase of my life. That was a weird way to describe it, but basically that was the car that defined what a poster car is supposed to be for me. And I set out in my life to one day hopefully be able to afford that car. And through a series of hard work, dedication, and lucky opportunities and right place, right time, and the right advice from all the people around me, I found myself in a position to buy my very own Lamborghini Murcielago LP640 back in 2025. I bought it in January back in New Jersey, but the car was originally sold new in Union City, California, where I now live, and it was very exciting to bring that car home. And over the last 18 months of ownership, I have put 5,000 miles on my Murcielago, and now I want to review what those miles have been like. So the first miles that I put on my Murcielago were in New Jersey, and it was snowing. The roads were salted. I had never driven a Murcielago before. I was highly overwhelmed, and I had no clue what to do in the car. And I took a test drive essentially before buying it in the cul-de-sac of this extremely wealthy Russian dude who I bought the car from in a rural town about 45 minutes outside of New York City in New Jersey. And I was very overwhelmed by the car. I had sat in them before. I kind of knew what the interior looked like and what to expect from that perspective, but actually driving the car, feeling the e-gear transmission, understanding the throttle response and the brakes and the steering feel was all actually quite a bit harder than all the thousands of other cars that I have jumped in and out of in my life and been able to get down the road pretty smoothly. This truly was a different level of experience. And yeah, you can yell at me all you want in the comments about being irresponsible driving a Murcielago on a salted road, but I think half a mile in dry conditions did not really do any damage to a car with a completely flat underside. So I got to drive the car around the block, and then we waited for the flatbed to come and get it from the guy's house and bring it to the dealership that I would use to help me arrange transportation back to the West Coast. Once it got to that dealership, they told me that the car looked to be in good condition, which was great considering that I had done the assessment of pre-purchase inspection all by myself in this guy's driveway, and to get a good, clean bill of health from a shop that had experience with Murcielagos was certainly worthwhile to get. And then I had to wait. So for 2 weeks, the car was on a truck headed from New Jersey all the way over to the Bay Area, and I got a call the day before the car was supposed to arrive from the shop over in New Jersey who said, "Hey, do you know how to get this car out of first gear?" And I said, no. And basically what they were referring to is that you can shut the car off in first gear. And essentially that's like leaving it in park. It's unlike a normal automatic transmission where there is a park, but it's also unlike a normal manual transmission where you control getting it out of first or out of whatever gear you leave it in when you shut it off. If you want your manual car to not roll down a hill or whatever, you will park it in gear and put the parking brake on, and that's essentially what you can do in an e-gear Murcielago. However, when you go to start a Murcielago, you cannot get it into neutral itself. It is supposed to be able to get itself into neutral when you turn the key in the ignition. However, my car wouldn't do that. So it was stuck on the truck at the very back of the trailer, blocking in 2 other cars that needed to be unloaded that were in front of it in the trailer. And the trucker was down in LA looking to unload those 2 cars, but he couldn't because my car was stuck on the trailer. This became very stressful. What ended up happening is the trucker went to the Lamborghini dealership in Newport Beach and they were unable to help him. Then the trucker decided that the best course of action would be to come up to me in the Bay Area before dropping the cars in LA, completely ruining his schedule, and have me figure out how to get the car off the trailer. And so that's what happened. We used a shop nearby to me that has experience with Lamborghinis, and they were able to get the car into neutral by performing a hard transmission reset, which was very stressful, but ended up not being a big deal. And we found a workaround to that issue that still persists to this day. I have no reason to fix it, and I have just parked the car in neutral for my entire ownership. The handbrake works perfectly fine. So that was a bit of a bumpy start, but it got worse very quickly. The first drive I had with the car was from the shop that got it off the trailer back to my house. And that drive was, again, extremely overwhelming and stressful. I had no clue what all the gauges meant. I barely knew how to shift gears in the thing. I had tons of people giving me attention that at that particular moment I didn't really want, because this was a car that I had just put a bunch of my money into, far more than any other car before, and I didn't really know how to behave with so much of my net worth tied up in a single vehicle. I'm used to driving cars fast, I'm used to driving cars and having fun with it, but this was a lot more of like a, oh crap, like I have this gigantic car that I'm unfamiliar with, I'm getting a ton of attention, and I don't know what to do in this situation. So I got the car home, and then I got it the next day to a car meet that was hosted at Driven Autocare Fremont. And this was the biggest car meet that we ever had at this shop. It was huge, it was a packed house, and I got to park my Murcielago next to my Aston Martin DBS that I had at the time, front and center next to a Pagani Utopia. That drive to and from the shop that day proved that the car had a nearly flat tire and a very bad brake and wheel vibration, and that I still had no clue what I was doing driving it. And I thought, man, I just spent $160,000 on this car that seems to have some issues, and I don't really know what to do about it. And granted, the car had been sitting for most of the last 7 years. The guy had put 3,000 miles on it in 7 years, and that's not the use case that I was about to put this car through. And it told me about that very quickly, that it was unfamiliar with this level of use. The next drive I went on was a couple days later. I took the car to a photo shoot. I wanted to very quickly document my ownership of this car, and I had arranged with a new photographer named Keanu that I was going to take the car up into the Marin Headlands above the Golden Gate Bridge, and we were going to get some amazing pictures of the car in some of the quintessential Bay Area shoot spots. And Keanu's an excellent photographer, and we had a really good shoot where we got to shoot it in front of the Golden Gate Bridge, at the missile bunkers, in the tunnel up in the Marin Headlands there. We got pulled over by the police because he shot rollers out of the trunk of his Kia. It was a whole thing. But then I tried to go home, and I made it about 4 miles. I did a really big pull going up a hill into the Marin Headlands, and I saw a low oil pressure light come on, and then a ton of some sort of white steam smoke thing coming out from the engine bay. And I panicked. I thought, oh, I just blew up my car. But then I realized it was still running, and the low oil pressure light actually went off. So what actually did happen here? Then I got confused, and I didn't smell anything because the engine's behind you, and so it's kind of hard to actually, smell what's going on in the engine bay. But the car was still running. All the gauges seemed normal, and I had this huge plume of steam coming out the back after I had just passed a bunch of people driving like a total asshole, and I pulled over. And I learned very quickly that a coolant line had been routed in a way where it rubbed against the exhaust and blew a hole in the coolant line. This dumped all the coolant out of the car, which meant I now had to find a way to get it back to that shop that had helped me out just a couple of weeks earlier. And so I called the shop. I said, hey, can I come by today? And I called a tow truck company and said, hey, I've got a Lamborghini. Can you tow it all the way about 80 miles down to that shop? And they said, yeah. And fortunately, I learned a lesson quickly that Lamborghini owners need to carry a fair amount of cash in their wallets at all times just to do Lamborghini owner things and make a cash discount out of a random vendors that you need to pay when you own that car. And so I got a cash discount on the tow, $600 back down to that shop. And then it sat in the shop for 3 weeks, getting $9,000 worth of work done, which included fixing 2 of the tires, which had slow leaks, a new battery, fixing that coolant hose, a couple oil leaks, and a check engine light that had come on on at the same time. So you could say the car has already welcomed me to Lamborghini ownership with open arms. I spent 160 grand on the car, and within a month I spent another $9,000 on repairs. But I got the car back and it behaved itself, apart from the check engine light coming back on and a couple other warning lights that became apparent and irrelevant very quickly in that order. One of them was the rear wing error light. And this error light comes on because the rear wing of my car has been adjusted in such a way that it rubs against the back of the engine bay panel. And so what that means is at high speeds, when that little wing deploys, it interferes with that other panel and the light comes on. It actually doesn't cause any sort of mechanical problems with the wing, but that light still comes on. The other error light that comes on regularly, in addition to the check engine light, are the bat wing lights. The bat wings on the Murcielago have a little button in the car that you can press in order to make the little wings go up. And at the beginning, I didn't know that and I kept them down most of the time that I owned the car. But once it was wrapped, which I'll get to in a second, I kept them up the whole rest of the time I owned the car, and that threw that error light quite regularly because it doesn't like that they are stuck open. But it looks way cooler with them up, so that's how I left it. After this, things got less eventful. I took the car to a wrap shop and had them wrap it in super candy satin fire red vinyl from Evolve Vinyls in Italy. They had to ship the vinyl over from Italy. It's extra expensive vinyl, and I spent extra money working with their designer to come up with the stripe setup that we ended up putting on the car in addition to the logo placement. And ultimately, I was very happy with how the design came out, and because it's very expensive for one reason, I didn't change that design for the entire rest of my ownership and most of the miles that I put on the car. But now it was officially mine. And my idea with putting on the wrap is that this car gets so much attention. Everywhere you go, people are taking pictures of it out the windows of their car or on the sidewalk, wherever they are. They're giving you a thumbs up, they're looking at it, they're amazed by it. It's so cool, so dramatic, so noticeable. And because of all that, I had to put my brands on it. And so we got a We Are Driven big sticker on the side, and Driven Autocare stickers on it. And so people could very quickly understand what the car represented. And I'm sure we got a lot of very good publicity from those logos. Then I got the car back and I started taking it to events everywhere. And so it was featured in several events. It got invited to several events because frankly, at the end of the day, it is a relatively rare, older, cool V12 Lamborghini. All V12 Lamborghinis have a ton of clout around them, but the Murcielago especially is right now having its time in the sun. It is the most popular V12 Lamborghini that exists today, even among the kids, I think, who grew up in the Aventador era. The Murci is becoming this incredibly valuable, expensive asset over the course of the last 18 months that really does make it something special. And that's one of the things I learned. That clout is so real. I had what I thought was a super noticeable and cool car before. I had a bright orange Aston Martin, but the Murci was a completely different level of people recognizing you and your car. Now I want to quickly touch on some of the obvious things that people talk about with Murcielagos. Number one, the E-gear transmission. It does have its quirks. It's kind of hard to get it off the line. Sometimes it gets jerky on you. It is a slow shifting transmission compared to a dual clutch, compared to most automatics, even compared to other single clutch transmissions that I've had in an Aston Martin Vanquish that I owned. The transmission is designed to add to the drama of the car once it's moving. The downshifts are incredible. The upshifts, if you really push it up in the RPMs, kick you in the ass. It's awesome, but it does have that slow speed drawback of being something that consumes the clutch really fast and is jerky. It's not smooth to drive that car at low speeds. It's very fast. It really is. It's not 800 horsepower, but it's still 640 horsepower, all-wheel drive. And if you floor it, you do watch the world start to fly by you at a blur. And I don't have a lot of cars and haven't experienced a lot of cars in my life that can do that. There are plenty, but it's still a very fast car. I actually think it's pretty nice to drive. The steering is actually very responsive. It is a good handling car considering how big it is. I wouldn't take it on any tight, twisty roads, but on the big sweepers and on freeways when you're changing lanes quickly, it handles itself just fine. I have no issue driving that car fast using the steering wheel. And lastly, the noise. Yes, mine has a stock exhaust, but it still sounds absolutely amazing. And so that is another one of the best sounding engines of all time, the Bizzarini V12. And the fact that the stock exhaust is as loud as it is, and when you really push that car into the high RPMs, it does exactly what you want it to do for noise. I do sometimes wish that I put a valved exhaust on it, but at the end of the day, the funds went to other places in that car instead of the exhaust. I drove the car for 4,000 miles with a check engine light on, and it didn't impact the reliability of the car at all. And frankly, it just added to the character of this car that I knew was not perfect. It's salvage title, it's wrapped, it's the wrong color underneath the wrap. A check engine light kind of fit the picture for that car. But overall, it started every single time that I wanted it to. I barely ever put it on a trickle charger, and I made sure to drive it at least once a week for my entire ownership of that car. During my ownership, I had a few people who asked to ride in it, or who asked if their kids could get rides in it. And to the extent possible, I agreed to do so. And a couple interesting things happened from that experience. The people who loved getting a ride in that car the most were actually just 20-something-year-old dudes who almost got down to tears in the passenger seat of that car while we were driving it, because it was such an impactful experience for them, as it was for me, the most overwhelming car that I had ever experienced at the time. But it was such a cool car that had all these little special things. The seat belts are in the middle. It's so low, it's so flat, it's so wide. The V12 is such a distinctive noise, and it's damn fast. And so people really enjoyed that car. But my most common request for somebody sitting in the passenger seat was a kid. And I had, I think, 4 or 5 different 5 and under year old kids in that car. And apparently, according to their parents, all those kids were absolutely obsessed with those cars. But when they got into it, I assume they were so overwhelmed that they had no reaction whatsoever. Another problem was the seating position for people that small was a bit of a challenge. I put my son in the car when he was 6 months old and younger, because the rear-facing car seat that we had at the time fit in the passenger seat really well, and I was able to shut off the passenger seat airbag. But as he grew up, he was no longer able to fit in the car because his car seat got bigger. But then there were these kids that were a little older who had no car seat to put in the car, and they sat in the seat, and all they could see out the window was up, because the windshield extends so far back, but they're so short and low down in the cabin that all they could see is the trees out the window. And I think that also kind of detracted from the experience. Then it came time for the car to go in for another service after a year. And I brought it into a different shop who identified a few different issues that the car had. One of them was actually rectifying the cause of the check engine light, which I was very grateful for. We also replaced all 4 brake pads and rotors on the car. That is a huge expense if you didn't know. And it was needed because all 4 rotors were extremely warped on the car. And so we went with gyro discs. They look really cool, and the stopping power of the car has been dramatically improved. I can drive it a lot faster with a lot more confidence because of that. That second service ended up running a little more than $10,000 with all of the repairs that I had done. We also got both engine mounts replaced. They were so collapsed that the people who worked on the car actually needed extra time to basically do surgery to access the hardware on the backside of the engine mounts that was so inaccessible because the engine mounts were essentially shrunk down to nothing. Since that second service, I've driven the car another 1,000 miles, bringing the mileage from 16,000 up to 21,000 miles. It's been an amazing experience with this car. It was one of those situations where I met my hero and I was not disappointed, and the time has come to move on. It's time for it to go. All right, hold that thought. So you would have heard at the end of that video, I was talking about selling the car, that car. Well, for now, I'm not. And here's what it looks like today. We unwrapped it. You'll see it's missing a logo on the front. It's missing a script on the back. And when we unwrapped it in preparation to sell it, some paint came off. It was originally red, it is now yellow, it's now turning red again. And so I'm left with the question of how do I best monetize this car right now to reinvest in the business? And I am, instead of looking at selling it, where I won't really be able to get good value because of the paint issues and all of the other stories with the car,
and the fact that these are continuing to go up in value very quickly, I would rather sell it on my own terms rather than feel the need and pressure to sell it quickly when really all I need is a couple $100,000 to put into my business. And so that's what we're doing instead, is I'm trying to find someone to basically give me a car loan for around $200,000 to keep that car on the books and in my possession. So that's my plan. That's how business goes. And that's all I got for this week's video. Stay driven.